He took a cab and went into town, and went into a sporting goods store, and bought a 12-gauge Winchester pump gun and a box of double-aught buckshot shells. The box of shells contained almost exactly the firepower of a claymore mine. He had them wrap the gun, and he left with it under his arm, and walked up Pecan Street to a hardware store. There he bought a hacksaw, and a flat mill file, and some miscellaneous items. A pair of pliers, and a pair of side cutters. A screwdriver, flashlight, a roll of duct tape. He stood on the sidewalk with his purchases. Then he turned and walked back down the street. In the sporting goods store again, he asked the same clerk if he had any aluminum tent poles. He tried to explain that he didn't care what kind of tent it was. He just needed the poles. The clerk studied him. "Whatever kind of tent it is," he said, "we'd still have to special order poles for it. You need to get the manufacturer and the model number. You sell tents, right? We got 3 different models. Which one has got the most poles in it? Well, I guess that would be our 10-foot wall tent. You can stand up in it. Well, some people could stand up in it. It's got a 6-foot clearance at the ridge. Let me have one." "Yes, sir." He brought the tent from the stockroom and laid it on the counter. It came in an orange nylon bag. Moss laid the shotgun and the bag of hardware on the counter and untied the strings and pulled the tent from the bag together with the poles and cords. "It's all there," the clerk said. "What do I owe you?" "It's $179 plus tax." He laid 2 of the $100 bills on the counter. The tent poles were in a separate bag, and he pulled this out and put it with his other things. The clerk gave him his change and the receipt, and Moss gathered up the shotgun and his hardware purchases together with the tent poles, and thanked him, and turned and left. "What about the tent?" the clerk called. In the room, he unwrapped the shotgun and wedged it in an open drawer, and held it, and sawed the barrel off just in front of the magazine. He squared up the cut with the file, and smoothed it, and wiped out the muzzle of the barrel with a damp face cloth, and set it aside. Then he sawed off the stock in a line that left it with a pistol grip, and sat on the bed, and dressed the grip smooth with the file. When he had it the way he wanted it, he slid the forearm back, and slid it forward again, and let the hammer down with his thumb, and turned it sideways, and looked at it. It looked pretty good. He turned it over, and opened the box of shells, and fed the heavy waxed loads into the magazine one by one. He jacked the slide back, and chambered a shell, and lowered the hammer, and then put one more round in the magazine, and laid the gun across his lap. It was less than 2 feet long. He called the Trail Motel, and told the woman to hold his room for him. Then he shoved the gun and the shells and the tools under the mattress, and went out again. He went to Walmart, and bought some clothes, and a small nylon zipper bag to put them in, a pair of jeans, and a couple of shirts, and some socks. In the afternoon, he went for a long walk out along the lake, taking the cut-off gun barrel and the stock with him in the bag. He slung the barrel out into the water as far as he could throw it, and he buried the stock under a ledge of shale. There were deer moving away through the desert scrub. He heard them snort, and he could see them where they came out on a ridge 100 yards away, to stand looking back at him. He sat on a gravel beach with the empty bag folded in his lap, and watched the sun set. Watched the land turn blue and cold. An osprey went down the lake. Then there was just the darkness. I was sheriff of this county when I was 25. Hard to believe. My father was not a lawman. Jack was my grandfather. Me and him was sheriff at the same time. Him in Plano and me here. I think he was pretty proud of that. I know I was. I was just back from the war. I had some medals and stuff, and of course people had got wind of that. I campaigned pretty hard. You had to. I tried to be fair. Jack used to say that any time you're throwing dirt, you're losing ground, but I think mostly it just wasn't in him to speak ill of anybody, and I never did mind being like him. Me and my wife has been married 31 years. No children. We lost a girl, but I won't talk about that. I served 2 terms, and then we moved to Denton, Texas. Jack used to say that being sheriff was one of the best jobs you could have, and being an ex-sheriff, one of the worst. Maybe lots of things is like that. We stayed gone and stayed gone. I done different things. Was a detective on the railroad for a while. By that time, my wife wasn't all that sure about us coming back here. About me running. But she seen I wanted to, so that's what we done. She's a better person than me, which I will admit to anybody that cares to listen. Not that that's saying a whole lot. She's a better person than anybody I know. Period.